Hello, welcome to Quarterlight, your car brochure channel, and in today's episode we're going to be looking at the Mazda 1000 and Mazda 1300. Hello and welcome back. Now if you're new to Quarterlight, we're a car brochure channel looking at car brochures from around the world for the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s and sometimes beyond that as well. So if you're interested in cars, car brochures, looking back on cars we all remember and some that we may not do, then please consider subscribing. It is all completely free. Now in today's episode we're looking at something a little bit different. We're looking at these early Mazdas, the Mazda 1000, Mazda 1300. Basically the car that came before the Mazda 323 in the UK. So we'll throw this on the board, talk about what year this is and have a look through this interesting brochure. And here is today's brochure, and it's in really good condition. As you can see, it's showing a couple of different models there. The Mazda 1000 985cc saloon, and then we've also got something called the Mazda 1300 1272cc saloon, and an estate version of these as well. Some parts of the world this was actually called the Mazda Familia, I believe, but in the UK no real name, rather weirdly. Now this particular brochure is dated, as we can see in this very tiny little small print here. The information contained in this brochure was accurate at the date of going to press, March 1976, which is kind of like getting to the end of these particular models. They ran to around about 1977, so this is really the last throw of the dice for these Mazda 1000s and 1300s in the UK. And just going back to the front cover, I don't know if many people would actually remember these unusual little Mazdas, but don't they look absolutely fantastic? I think they're great. I don't really particularly remember these on UK roads overall, to be honest with you. And Mazda, of course, is a nameplate that's really gone from strength to strength, hasn't it? I think you'll remember the model that came after it, though. The Mazda in the UK, the Mazda 323, seen here as a hatchback. I think more people remember this. I certainly remember these cars running around, and this is 1978, so just to give you some kind of like reference. I've been holding on to this brochure in some ways because I didn't really know if there would be too much interest, because I don't know how many people would remember these. But we've done a lot of Vauxhalls and Fords over the last few weeks. I thought it's time to like mix it up and throw something different on there. And this is actually a really nice brochure in amazing condition, actually, considering the age, 1976. You know, there's barely a sort of crease on even the corners. It's really nice condition. I think this very minor mark, I think, is the only thing detracting from it. But I think overall, a really bright, well-coloured brochure with that typical Mazda writing at the bottom in that familiar blue. Like I said, Mazda's really gone from strength to strength, particularly with its SUVs, but there was a much simpler time, as we can see here. Anyway, enough waffling, let's open the brochure up because there's quite a bit to get through. Okay, and then we open the brochure, and what lovely images we get, don't we? The two-door at the top there, then the really very unusual, and I really like this yellow estate. I think this is my favourite. And then this four-door at the bottom there. We've got on the other page some other lovely images. Overall, the quality of this brochure is very high for what would have been very cheap, economical little cars in the UK at the time. There's some text there. A few people have been asking me to read all the brochures and all the text in this brochure, so I'm not sure how long this brochure review is going to be, but that's what people are asking me to do, so read them all I will, and then we'll come back to these lovely images. So I'll start by saying probably smaller than average text, so I hope this is coming across on camera okay, but I'll certainly read it. It says, introducing the Mazda 1000 and 1300, very fully equipped full-size saloons, they look pretty small to me, that are far less expensive than some basic mini cars. As you can see, we haven't gone for penny pinching specifications that are all matte and no chrome. So although their economy cars, they don't look it. And because they're built right, alongside our exclusive sports coupe models, you get the same long-lasting qualities as the owners of our more expensive cars. The 1000 is a two-door that's available in two versions. One has the added attractions of wall-to-wall carpeting and a heated rear window. The 1300 is a more powerful version of the deluxe 1000 with two additional doors. Just as you expect from one of Japan's most advanced car makers, the Mazda 1000 and 1300 are beautifully engineered. Power for the range is produced by two engines of similar design, one 985cc, the other 1272cc. They're four-cylinder units that have 5 bearing crankshafts for smoothness and aluminium heads with overhead camshafts for high efficiency. Despite top speeds well above the legal limit, you'll rarely be driven to visit petrol stations. When you are, economical 2-star fuel is all you need to buy. But true economy isn't just more miles per gallon, it's more years per car, and that's where a Mazda's lasting qualities really come into their own. Image wise, so we've kind of like learnt this is going to be a 1300 with the 4 doors, and what a lovely design it is. I do love that front end, so that really cute looking little car overall. And you can see from the description there, they're doing pretty much what all the Japanese cars did at this time. Of course, take you back to the UK in the 70s. The UK buying public was very wary of these so-called foreign cars invading. But of course, the public soon discovered they were pretty reliable cars and usually better specifications, more kit on them for a lesser price than the UK equivalents. And obviously that's how they went from strength to strength and pretty much killed the British market off by doing that. So yeah, a lovely little front end image. Interesting grille as well, isn't it? And then if we move up, not bad looking seats actually with head restraints. Remember how reluctant the UK was to put head restraints on their car? Well, here it is on this little 4-door yellow example. Oh, and just before I actually move on, we can notice at the front of this one it's got more of a square or rectangular headlights on there and a slightly different looking grille, because this isn't really the 4-door, it's actually a 5-door. This is going to be your estate version, dust and all that, so you can tell the difference with the estate from the front end and those square rather than round headlights. So then this will make this the little 2-door 1000 version, and of course it's still got these little head restraints on this little model as well, shown here in white with these very sort of remind me of the same sort of thing Datsun was doing with the very unusual, it's almost like garbage bin sort of wheel trims on there. Very Japanese look to them. Moving down to my favourite model, this lovely yellow estate, and we know this is going to have the larger engine in this one as well now. Lovely little handles on there. Of course it's talking about no matte black, it's everything's chrome finished on there. How lovely. Very interesting back window as well, isn't it? That sort of, I don't know if it's a split design or just like a metal bar on there. Let's see if we can see that. Hard really to tell, but you can certainly see those absolutely huge hinges on that rear tailgate, can't you? That's very unusual, and certainly that will take up a little bit of space, no doubt. But moving on, a side-on view of our 4-door. Interesting. I like how it like tails off at the back, almost like Peugeot-esque at the back with that boot tailing off. An interesting looking little car, but let's move on. Let's turn the page, see what else we can discover. Turn the page, more sort of interior shots, and lovely, we can even get a nice look at the rear tail lights on these models as well now. And like I say, they really spared no expense of this brochure. The photography is really nice. The quality of the papers, almost like shiny card. It's so nice, and I guess that's why it's held up so nice. But for a budget car, they really went out of their way to make them look amazing and very buyable. When you went in the showroom and they give you this brochure, that alone would give you a good impression, I think. We'll start by reading the text at the top, somewhere up here, and then we'll come back to these lovely images. So it tells us now you can economise in style. If you're new to Mazda motoring, you'll be surprised how well equipped these economy cars are. The high backed front seats are fully reclining and highly adjustable, so you can find a comfortable driving position whatever your size. Whichever of our economy saloons you buy, you'll also be sitting pretty on smart cloth upholstery, so no vinyl here. And all but the least expensive 1000 have wall-to-wall carpeting. Above the laminated windscreen there are twin padded sun visors, and below a very dashing fascia that incorporates a comprehensive range of instruments and warning lights, including an ammeter, water temperature gauge and variable instrument illumination, plus a switch for hazard warning lights. Most of the minor controls are operated by the two stalks on either side of the neat 3-spoke wheel. One is a 5-function lever that controls a headlight flasher, main beam and dip, plus the indicators, 2-speed wipers and twin jet washers. The other is the switch for the side and headlights, along with the conventionally positioned horn buttons that help keep your hands where they belong on the wheel. Centrally, there's a panel with controls for the through-floor heating and ventilation system and its 3-speed booster fan. Below, you'll find the change lever for the 4-speed all-synchromesh gearbox. Reverse gear automatically operates twin reversing lights. Right outside the driver's window, there's a useful door-mounted mirror for safer overtaking. So more proof that there's really putting lots of equipment on there. You know, 2 reversing lights wasn't really commonplace actually in the 70s on a budget car. 2 little arrows tell me to turn the page, but we're going to stick on this page and look at these images. Lovely little shot at speed, and then we move down. Not a bad looking interior actually for a 70s budget car. Like I said, those sort of like head restraints. I don't know how far they're going to fall on your head. I guess it depends how tall you are, but certainly a nice high back seat nevertheless. Glimpse in the back seats, looks like that is the yellow example. Unusual little image showing that the door opens rather weirdly. I think it's trying to show it opens quite widely, maybe. Is your 1000. And then one of my favourite little shots actually of this, because it really shows you how it's badged, and those lights, don't they look amazing? Those lights there really look something a little bit special. And then we've got the reversing lights into the chrome bumper itself. Hard to make out, but saying on the Mazda 1000, a little bit of a look at those little reversing lights and the tiny little exhaust of the 1000. And then the interior, which actually I think in some ways looks quite sporty, although they've gone for a little bit of rather very fake looking wood at least on there, and we can see that sort of blanking points where you could option a radio by the looks of it. There is your wall-to-wall carpet, and like some kind of like carpet mat over the top there. Very interesting. That steering wheel itself is extremely interesting, isn't it? Very peculiar looking badge on there, and I presume they're horn buttons on the arms there of the steering wheel. Turn the page and then we get to I'll say ours, but it may not be, but certainly my favourite, this yellow estate. Some lovely images for this. The text is really continuing from the previous page, of course, and then we've got some like a manufacturing plant and even showing us some other different models of Mazda there. So let's have a look at the text first though. So it starts by saying the doors themselves are wide opening with stops at the full and half open positions. I guess that's what it was showing us in that unusual door opening, although you'd think you'd have this text on that page, but There we go. On our two-door models, the rear seat passengers benefit from hinged rear windows. For smokers, there's a cigarette lighter plus ashtray front and rear. Very much a sign of the times there, the 70s. And for security, the steering column and petrol filler cap are both equipped with locks. For maximum effect at minimum effort, we built in light precise steering. It gives less of a turning circle than the shorter Volkswagen Golf. Of course, the Golf at this time was a very small car, the Mark 1 Golf, kind of like showing you who the competitor for this car could have been. And the dual circuit brake system has front discs to ensure safe, sure stopping, whatever the conditions. Then we move on to the estate. It's just a shame that previous paragraph there, they couldn't have fitted on the previous page where it meant more sense, but I guess they overran. It continues, like I said, talking about the estate, a practical small estate with great capacity to carry. Although the boot of our saloons accommodate most people's requirements, we realised it didn't measure up to everyone's needs. That's why we built our 1300 estate. For the most part, it's the same comfortable saloon as our spacious four-door 1300, but behind the rear seats, it offers extra space. Space that stretches to almost 3 feet with the back seats up, and a full 4 feet 10 with it down. The wide rear tailgate swings up out of the way to provide a loading height that lies low above the ground. And then it gives us these little bit of an image of this one with the hatch up. Unusual lights, aren't they? There's what looks like extra sort of reflectors on the bumpers as well. An unusual design overall, actually. Moving down, it tells us the rear load compartment is covered with a practical mat. The seating has a tough vinyl upholstery and the side windows are protected with chrome lashing rails. So that kind of answers one of our questions. It's not a split window at that side rear window. It is sort of these protective chrome lashing rails, which we may get a chance to look at. Now that you've heard what we have to say about the Mazda 1000 and 1300 range, listen to the opinion of your local Mazda dealer, then ask him for a test drive and judge for yourself. Of course, at a time when only a man could possibly be involved in any sort of motor trade. We'll look at the images for the estate, which are lovely, then we'll come back, have a look at sort of the manufacturing, and there is a bit of text on there as well. So like I said, then we get some really nice images of these Mazda estates. I wonder if there's any of these even left in the UK now. I've certainly never seen one. So yeah, unusual tail lights at the back. Not quite as interesting as the saloon, but still interesting with these sort of extra sort of reflectors on the bumpers there. Very unusual handle as well. That chrome handle for the bonnet. You can just about make out these lashing rails that it's talking about for tying things down. No real wash white, but like I said, just a cheap budget car that actually looks quite nice. And then from the front, continuation of course of all that bright work, very nice indeed. There is your traditional brochure shot of a vehicle at speed. I'm not really sure why they ever include that, but there it is. And then we're even joined by a second blurry shot at speed for whatever reason. The interior, a bit more of a dark, more somber one on this particular model. And then we get a better look on the inside. Quite a bit of wheel arch intrusion, but I think you would expect that on a 70s car. And then we got this very shiny material on the floor. And then the typical image with the rear seat folded down to show you how much extra room you get. The text continues talking about Mazda as a whole. So Mazdas are really built to last. At most car factories, testing is a routine matter. At Mazda, it's an obsession. From the moment it starts life as a prototype to the moment it's dispatched to you, your Mazda is subjected to an almost endless series of rigorous, painstaking checks. It starts in our design and development unit, where we use advanced equipment like a computerized structural analysis system to to help us evaluate new body and chassis designs for safety and durability. Later, developments reached the Mazda test track for a punishing sequence of torture tests. Under strict test conditions, we roll them, smash them into brick walls and drive them through clouds of dust. We give the suspension a rough time, race the engine and skid and slide them. Pretty good job there, whoever had that job. And then we evaluate them to ensure that each new model or each new Mazda model will take the roughest treatment that you could give it for mile after mile. We ensure that every single Mazda is tested in production too. There are some 700 inspection stations throughout the factory. Some test incoming materials and components. Others are on the final assembly lines where over 2,000 checks are carried out on the suspension, steering, fuel lines, gears and instruments, even the cigarette lighter. That's why we say Mazdas are built to last. And then we get the images. One thing it doesn't mention, of course, is rust resistance, and I think that's probably its Achilles heel, hence why you never really saw any of these even in the 90s, did you? Like I said, I can't even remember seeing them in the 80s. So I think they are extremely good, reliable vehicles. I think that's probably the shortcomings, but then again, you could say that about most 70s cars. So yeah, some interesting sort of test images. Other Mazda models, look at that. And then we have a production line. And then the full production line there before they've been painted or even had many components put on them. And that takes us to the back page, the specifications, and this one's even got a dealer stamp at the bottom here, so wait around to see where this particular brochure came from. More lovely images, even an engine shot, which we'll have a look at as well, but we'll start with the specs. So it starts looking at the Mazda 1000, the two-door saloon, showing the dimensions and the turning circle and even the curb weight. Then we get the engine. So a water-cooled 4-cylinder inline OHC, 985cc using regular 2-star fuel. Moving down further. And of course, I'm going to certainly cast my camera over all this, but certainly if there's anything you want to see more details, just pause that screen and read it all. I'm sure you're able to do so. Tells you a bit about the carburetor, fuel pump, air cleaner, fuel tank capacity. Then it moves on to the transmission, which is a 4-speed all synchro and reverse, of course. It even gives you the gear ratios. Tell you it's a floor shift rather than a column change, of course. Steering, recirculating ball and nut, and then the suspension. So the front is strut with coil springs, the rear is semi-elliptic leaf springs. So that certainly is a very antiquated way of doing it, but you know, this is the 70s, isn't it? Shock absorbers front and rear, double acting hydraulic, axle rear semi-floating, brakes, disc at the front, drums at the rear, but I think that's probably what you would expect. Moving on, it tells about the 1300, which is telling us it's the same specification as the 1000 saloon except for the following. Let's have a look moving down. So it's a water-cooled 4-in-line OHC 1272 unit, again using 2-star fuel. Transmission, again a 4-forward speed, all synchromesh plus reverse, again showing you the gear ratios, and again it's a floor change. And then finally ending with the estate. Obviously the dimensions are going to be what's going to be slightly different about that one. So moving down, we have the small print, which we actually looked at the start of the episode, telling us this brochure is from March 1976 and it's a GB or a British brochure, which is actually an unusual location because then it starts talking about the standard equipment. So the Mazda 1000 2-door saloon, comprehensive fascia, speedometer, fuel gauge, temperature gauge, ammeter, panel light, rheostat, glove box, heater, 3-speed fan, through floor ventilation, cigarette lighter, interior ventilation, ashtray front and rear, door mounted rear view mirror, 5-function lever switch for wipers, washers, indicators, main beam, dip, headlamp flasher. They've got cloth seats and reclining front seats with fore and aft seat adjustment, front seat headrests, twin sun visors, 2-speed wipers, twin jet washers, side opening rear windows, hazard warning flashers, reversing lights, locking petrol cap, overhead cam engine, front disc brakes, dual circuit brake system, front suspension, struts with coil springs, double acting shock absorbers, anti-roll bar, laminated windscreen, toolkit, touch-up paint. And then on top of that, if you get the deluxe version of the 1000, it's still a 2-door, but it adds carpets and a heated rear window. The 1300 adds heated rear window and wind up side rear window. And then the 1300 5-door estate has the same as the 1000 saloon, but with PVC upholstery and wind up side rear windows. So we looked at that one, so it looked very dark in there, very black. That's because it's PVC. So the interior on the estate isn't quite as nice, I would say, but maybe they was going for a more hard-wearing interior because they thought the estate might have a bit more hard-wearing life. I don't know, but I think I would have preferred it if they kept the same seats. Nevertheless, let's look at the final images. So it ends with that same sort of rear shot of that base model. Our 4-door. Again, a repeat of that rear shot of the estate. And the engine bay. Now we did promise a dealer stamp. And your Mazda dealer at this time was Regal Motors in Leeds. Low Road. Wonder what's there now. Wonder if it's still a dealership of some kind. If you do know, jot it in the comments. And then we'll end with the address at the end for Mazda Car Imports GB Limited, Longfield Road, Tunbridge Wells. Interesting. Anyway, we'll wrap this up by saying, if you do remember these small cars, please do jot it in the comments, because I really don't. Maybe I did see them, I didn't really think too much at the time, I'm not sure, but I certainly don't really remember these. I remember what came next, the 323s in the UK, and they were a reasonably good selling car. Now, what can we say? Mazda, like I say, has gone from strength to strength, hasn't it? So interesting to see them in the 70s, and indeed, if you do want to see more sort of 70s Mazdas, please jot that in the comments. I have a few more brochures for Mazdas in the 70s. So let me know if that's something you'd like to see. But we'll end, as we always do, by saying thank you so much for watching Quarterlight today and the little Mazda 1000 and Mazda 1300s in this 1976 Mazda brochure for the UK. I'll put at the end here a couple of little boxes. One will be for the Mazda 323, so you can click on that and take you to the Mazda 323, what came next, if you've not seen that episode. But if you're not done already and you're new to Quarterlight, please do consider subscribing. It really helps the channel and helps us give so much content. Like I say, we're doing content now 5 times a week, and obviously that's a lot of work, but I like to put a lot of content out there because there's so much to talk about in these brochures, and certainly facts that we may have forgotten over the years. I appreciate that so much. You can also become a member. Member is a very small fee, so don't get the two mixed up. Like I said, just click on that subscribe, don't worry about it, no fee involved in that at all. If you want to become a member and support the channel, that's a very small fee. Although I'll make a note that we're not really offering too much for memberships at the moment, because we've only got a few members. But I really appreciate those who have become a member, knowing they're not really giving too much, but you really do help the channel, because obviously there is a cost in making these videos. So thank you so much for those who have done that. We'll end by saying thank you for watching. Please do take care. We'll see you very soon, and goodbye.